Hello everyone, welcome back to the Highland Greenhouse here at Carlton Carnivores. Got another plant spotlight for you guys, and this is a species that I once grew quite a while back and unfortunately lost, and more recently was able to reacquire it, and it's starting to really take off, so I'm hoping to see maybe upper pictures in a year or two from it. But this is a Philippine species that is becoming quite common in cultivation, and that is Nepenthes copelandii. This is a species from southern and central Mindanao, and it was originally known only from Mount Apo in Mindanao when it was first described, and then for several years afterward as well. It was actually first described in the very early 1900s, and then the original records were lost for it until it was rediscovered in the mid-2010s. So kind of a tumultuous history for these guys. It was originally, again, only known on Mount Apo, but it, I believe, has been recorded on a few other mountains in southern central Mindanao as well at this point. These guys are montane highland plants, although they often are fairly tolerant of somewhat warmer conditions than strict highlanders. But they grow in elevations of between 1,100 and 2,600 meters in elevation. So roughly, give or take, 3,800, 4,000 feet, up to almost 9,000 feet in elevation. So quite a range of elevations that they grow in, and that's one reason why it's fairly tolerant of a variety of conditions, although usually does better in cooler conditions overall. Now these guys, they grow as again, fairly variable habitats. They will grow terrestrially in open areas, or they will grow epiphytically on more enclosed areas, or simply in areas where there are good moss paths that are developing on tree branches and tree trunks and such. So oftentimes they will start and end their lives without ever touching the ground, always up in the canopy of the forests. Now, they grow up to, those stems can be over 10 meters, so over 30, 33 feet in length, and oftentimes they will branch as they get older as well, something that maybe not a lot of Nepenthes naturally do if they aren't injured. A lot of them will grow as one vine, and then that dies off when new basils form and take over. These guys will sometimes branch as well as form basils. They have a relatively slender, thin stem, and petiolate leaves that come down and they actually clasp around the base of the stem. They don't, the sides of the leaf do not run down the stem very far, even when the internodes start lengthening as it turns to climbing growth. Instead, it just clasps around the back and just ends there. Narrow up to the broad lamina. Now these leaves can be up to almost a foot in length, and the main lamina part is usually roughly ovular, a little bit wider near the tip, before it comes down to a slightly tapered or simply fast, abruptly ending, so kind of obtuse leaf tip there, down to the lower pitchers. Now the lower pitchers, they are fairly similar to most of its other relatives in the Alata complex. So that's species like, again, Alata, gracilliflora, Zygon, cornuta, mindanaoensis, and so on. A very variable group with a lot of species in the Philippines. But they are still distinct in their own right. They can grow up to about 11 inches, maybe even up to a foot tall in some cases, although oftentimes you will see them more between 6 and 8 inches tall. And they are almost cylindrical, but they do tend to have a slightly more broad ovular base, up to a slight hip that they have, that then narrows just above that hip, and then it may be cylindrical or it may be slightly funnel shaped up to that. So these pitchers can have a very, very slender hourglass profile in some cases. They tend to have distinctive wings. They're fairly small wings, but they tend to be retained in lower pitchers throughout the period where the plant is producing lowers. They have small fringes, and usually they're most present on the upper 2/3 of the pitcher. Sometimes they actually disappear down at the base of the pitcher, but they will sometimes run down too near where the tendril attaches, up to a teardrop-shaped mouth, roughly. It's slanted, ovular, simple, and the peristome is also relatively simple. It's fairly narrow. It curls nice and tight, rounded around the edge of the mouth, up to a small ovular lid. That lid usually doesn't have any particular adornments or anything. There's no keels or hooks usually on this. Also, something to note with this species is it is almost glabrous. So there are little hairs that will run the edge of the leaves and maybe underneath the base of the midrib, but otherwise the leaves and the pitchers generally don't have any hairs on them, and that's something that will distinguish it from species like Alata, which is a fairly fuzzy plant. Now, the color of these pitchers is somewhat variable, but they will usually be some sort of base color of kind of greenish or cream yellowish, and then they'll have bright to very deep purple red mottling throughout the pitcher usually. And the interior of the pitcher will often mirror that as well, with much more dense, kind of brighter gray purple mottling on a creamy white background. Now, the bigger the pitcher, oftentimes the more stretched out that mottling is, so it's very attractive as these guys grow up. And then the peristome may be solid red, or it may develop mild striping on it. The solid red is usually more common with the lower pitchers. So very similar in some cases to other species like Mindanaoensis, very similar coloration. Now, as these guys transfer to upper pitchers, which I don't yet have photos of from this plant, of course, it's still too young, but the upper pitchers, they tend to be a lot smaller than the lower pitchers. So again, these guys can reach almost a foot tall. The upper pitchers often don't exceed much more than maybe 3-4 inches tall, maybe up to 6 inches if you're lucky and you get a really big one. But what's distinct about them is they are generally very broadly funnel shaped. So they start at the base of the tendril and immediately start curving and widening out towards the mouth, and it just continues widening out all the way up to the peristome. It becomes kind of a very flat, open mouth that kind of faces upward on that trap rather than slanted forward like on the lowers here. And those upper pitchers, they don't have any wings at all. They completely lack them. And then the coloration, it may be similar to the lower pitchers in some cases. A lot of them may retain a lot of mottling or at least red blushing and such. That peristome is still fairly thin around the mouth and rounded, but it may be a little bit more striped instead of just solid red, although usually if the lowers are solid, the uppers usually have solid red peristomes as well. But upper pitchers may also be a lot paler than the lower pitchers in some cases. So they may be entirely green or yellowish except for that more reddish peristome. So because they're capturing flying insects that are looking more for stuff that is reflecting in the UV spectrum or pale yellow colors like flowers often are, that's what they are adapted for, whereas the lower pitchers are more matching the leaf litter and such, or ground based flowers that other plants may be producing, and so they are darker. Now, of course, like all Nepenthes, these guys are dioecious, so they are only either male or female. So when they start flowering, in cultivation, if you want to make seeds, you got to make sure you have a male and a female flowering at the same time, or you have to save pollen from the male until you get a female to bloom. In the wild, they usually have kind of a slight seasonal tendency, and then when they bloom, they're attracting oftentimes either small flying moths at night or nocturnal beetles that come in. They seek out the kind of odd fungal smell that these flowers often have, and they will transfer pollen one to the other. The seeds then, of course, like most Nepenthes, form in these little pods, and when those break open, they're very thin and filamentous little wood splinter looking seeds that are distributed by wind and water. And when they sprout, hopefully they land on a nice open space, either a moss pad on a tree branch again, or a nice open space on the ground. And they take a couple months to sprout usually, and then several years to mature. Now this species, again, it is only known for certain on a couple of mountaintops right now. It might be more widespread. Those mountains are, for the most part, relatively protected either by their remote locality or because they are within protected lands. So this species is not particularly at risk in the wild, and luckily it is also fairly well established now in cultivation, not too hard to find. So if you want to grow the species, expect a moderate-sized plant, maybe a little smaller than this, is probably going to go for between 25 and maybe 40 bucks a piece. Relatively inexpensive as far as Nepenthes tend to go. Now, they grow in just the same kind of mix that your average Nepenthes will prefer. Nice loose, maybe 1-to-1 perlite sphagnum, or in my case, perlite sphagnum and coconut chips to keep it nice and loose and aerated, but still retains a lot of moisture so that they never dry out. That's what these guys prefer, is always slightly damp, but never sopping wet and never dry. Now these guys, again, they are a primarily highland plant. They will tolerate warmer conditions, so if you have nighttime temperatures that are not getting down below the mid-60s, these guys will probably be okay for a little while, especially if maybe in winter it gets a little cooler. They'll be happier and can recuperate then. But if you can, their preferences probably will be to have daytime temperatures that don't exceed 80-85 degrees Fahrenheit, and the nighttime temperatures that preferably drop into the low 60s to upper 50s Fahrenheit, so they get that nice temperature drop, and that keeps them stable, and they'll be able to grow happy and healthy from there out. Now, they also prefer a fair amount of light. They will tolerate part shade, because they do grow in fairly forested areas. But if you can get them acclimated to dappled full sun, they will tolerate that. Of course, most people will probably be growing these guys indoors under lights, so simply the strongest artificial lights that you can provide are what they prefer. Now these guys, they are fairly tolerant of variable humidity conditions as long as you acclimate them properly to those conditions. So they will prefer, on average, humidity that is between maybe 60-70% most of the time, increasing perhaps at night as temperature drops, humidity naturally rises. So they will prefer that a little bit. But they are fairly tolerant of a wide range. So as long as you acclimate them, you may be able to grow them in household humidity conditions. So somewhere around maybe 20 to 40% humidity, they are capable of tolerating that. So it is a fairly tolerant and fairly easy to grow plant as long as you give them the proper soil. If it is too dense a soil, they are fairly at risk of root rot, and that is a big problem, so do try to avoid that. But a fairly easy to grow, very colorful and attractive plant, especially once it gets mature. Again, this is a young plant, and they will get pictures that are 4 times the size of this one currently. So fairly impressive, especially once you start getting those upper pictures. They may be smaller, but their funnel shape is very attractive, and so a great addition to have in your collection. Now that is all I have for this species currently. If there's anything that I missed, or if you have questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below. As always, I have more information on throughout the channel, other species that I've covered, so make sure to give a like to this video and subscribe so that you don't miss any other videos that come up on here. If you'd like to learn more, you can find my blog and database on my website at carltoncarnivores.com, or follow me on social media. Wherever I am at, it is at Carlton Carnivores. If you would like to help support the production of these videos, subscribing to this channel does help a lot, and watching the videos all the way through, because those watch hours get us closer to monetization. But you can also buy some of the plants or merchandise that I will have available on my website shop. There's a lot of variety there, Nepenthes and sundews and butterworts and bladderworts, and a lot of non-carnivorous plants as well. So a variety for everyone. You can also become a Patreon member. You get early access to the videos before they're released publicly, and access to the monthly seed contests that I do, along with some other kickbacks. If you don't want to do a monthly subscription, though, you can simply do one-time donations at places like coffee.com/hcarlton, or contact me for other methods. But until next time, I'm Hawk and Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.